What's up, everybody? Welcome to another summer edition of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. That's Colby, Cohen. I'm Jonny, Lazarus. And we are in the middle of July with not that much to talk about. Let's be honest. There's not much buzz going on around the NHL. I'm at UMass currently. Colby's still recovering from Colin Wilson's wedding over the weekend, which I'd love to hear about because I actually don't hear many Colby Cohen party stories, and I think you partied pretty hard from what I understand. So excited to hear that. And Mario Ferraro from the San Jose Sharks should be joining us. He's a good friend of mine, and I know Colby and Mario have interacted in the past, but right now Mario's not answering my texts or phone calls, so he's kind of on the MCH shit list, which we haven't put him on officially yet, but he might have his name on there.
Yeah, we definitely will not be calling him a friend of the show anymore because we set this whole recording up around a 4 p.m. Recording with him, and it is currently 4:12. So we gave him an extra 12 minutes.
Yep.
And we said the show must go on. So if Mario does stand us up, I think what we must commit to next season is anytime he's on the ice for a goal against, we have to show it that morning on Morning Cup of Hockey. So
just make him the villain.
I think we will be sure to point out every bad shift that he has next season if he doesn't actually come get on the show here at some point as we're recording.
I'm actually a little upset and like a little rattled though. Like I love him, but like,
well, this is your fault.
I know it's my fault.
It is your fault. I mean,
hopefully he shows up.
Your guest, your teammate, your dinner buddy.
Yeah.
Your no show.
But let's hear about you. How's the weekend? You were at, a pretty cool wedding in Woodstock with all your buddies, some BU teammates, some current NHLers. How was the party, man? I this is the first time ever Colby like actually didn't want to talk to me because he physically could not.
Jonny was texting me on Saturday night, and after about 7 messages, I just wrote back, "Please leave me alone." But no, look, it's anytime you watch one of your best friends get married, it's amazing, and I think a lot of people are familiar with Colin Wilson's journey, and he wrote a great piece in the Players Tribune, and he's done a lot of work on himself and helping other players, and he had some struggles with not necessarily just alcohol, but just a number of things that he battled, and did go to rehab, got himself cleaned up, got himself healthy, went back to college, graduated. Something that's really hard to do, especially when you have 2 full years left and, now trying to save the planet, into clean energy and electric cars and this and that. And so, watching him up there and, look, I get to spend a lot of time with him because he lives in Jersey City. So he's like an hour and 20 minutes from here. So I get to see him be a dad. His daughter's born a week before mine. Or a week after mine, maybe. And so we get to spend some time with Colin and his wife and his daughter. And it's pretty awesome watching your friends, become parents. I think that's one of the cooler things that I've experienced in the last 5 years with my friends all starting to have kids. So, seeing Colin tie the knot this weekend was really cool. You're right. It was a pretty fun list of guys. And look, it's in Woodstock, New York, so you probably can put two and two together. The wedding was 70s themed, right? Like 70s hippie themed. So we all kind of dressed the part. Nobody really wore like a traditional suit.
I was really hoping Vic would have a picture pulled up when you said that, but that's -1 for VDog.
So it was a lot of fun, and it's always good. Look, I have my core group of friends that were there with Shaddy and Reamer, and Colin Wilson, obviously, but then it's good to see other guys too. Like Tyson Barrie was at the wedding, who I haven't, I see Tyson once a year, twice a year when we would play Nashville or wherever he played at the time in broadcasting, but I don't ever really get to spend time like that with him. And this is a guy that, we were in training camp together as, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. So it's great to see him. Jonathan Taves was there. It was awesome to see Taser. I don't know how many Blackhawks fans are dialed into our show, but I got to tell you, I don't know the last time I saw him that happy. He was like so much fun, laughs, jokes. I know in Chicago, everybody refers to him as Captain Serious. And I just don't think people ever really get to see that side of him. I really had never seen it before. But he was a ton of fun. We had a great time together. We didn't talk about hockey one time, him and I. It was all just other things. And so for any Hawks fans out there wondering what Jonathan Toews is up to,
he's pretty damn happy.
He's living his best life. He really is. I was really happy to see that because I know the end was a struggle there for him in Chicago. So, I saw Chet Picard, your boy Calvin's older brother. He was there. I told him Calvin came on the show during the playoffs and he gave him a lot of love and this and that. And I think Chet really loved to hear that. He's like, yeah, the only thing I taught Calvin is how not to play goalies. So, so it's good to see those types of guys. And then some old BU teammates. Our wives are all good pals. A lot of them are also, pregnant. And so they all kind of did their own thing and went to bed early. And the boys got in one a couple of nights in a row. We had fun. I don't know the last time I saw 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Yet I saw that on multiple nights
without Sloan.
Hell yeah! What?
I'm sure you've seen those nights with Sloan.
Little different when you've got a crying baby on your shoulder. And I will say what I underestimated was my bounce back. Like Sunday and Monday, I was a corpse. An absolute corpse. And today I finally feel a shred of like myself. But I definitely did underestimate that stuff. So the last thing I will say about the wedding, I got to give some love to a couple of people. So Tyson Barrie gave an incredibly funny speech. He really was hysterical when he got up there. He wrote a whole poem and it was hysterical. I mean, like I had tears coming out of my eyes. I was laughing so hard at his speech. And I gave a speech. I didn't get booed. I was really nervous. I don't love public speaking. I really don't. And yeah, Vic, if you want to flash that one of the pictures, that's fine with me. I'm good with it. It definitely was a unique wedding.
You look good.
Thank you.
I'll give you credit.
So I got to give some love to Tice. And then Shaddy also gave a killer speech. He did a great job. Another guy who had us all belly laughing at his speech. My speech, I kind of was like a little bit of jokes. But then I tried to be a little more loving just because most of the jokes that I think I tell about Colin are probably a little offsides. They're probably not jokes to share in front of a group of people, although it was a small wedding. There's 50 people. There wasn't a lot of people. Yeah, it was really small, really intimate. Just his really, really good friends, close friends. And so got to give some love to those guys for giving great speeches. And yeah, I was happy my speech landed. People laughed. I got some nucks. None of my old teammates booed me or gave me shit. Colin's wife wasn't mad at the one joke that I made. My wife wasn't mad at the one sort of offsides remark that I made. I just said, something like, Colin and I have had a lot of shared experiences in life, and luckily our wives aren't one of those shared experiences. So I think most people that know Colin and I, especially from our college days, knows that we had a lot of the same girlfriends. We'll call it that. So all in all, honestly, Johnny, it was probably the most fun weekend I've had in the summer. I don't remember laughing and smiling as much as I have outside of my daughter. And so it was a great time. I'm glad we talked about it, and I'm glad it's kind of the end of the line for me with hockey weddings. I really don't expect or know if there would be any others. But it's been kind of a long stretch of my teammates getting married over the last, almost 10 years now. Brandon Yip was the first guy. And then, a bunch of BU teammates, bunch of pro teammates, so it's been kind of a long wedding road for the last number of years that I'm kind of glad it is over. Although, we were talking as a group and we said, we really got to do something like this once a summer because we have too much fun when we all get together without our children. Nobody had their kids there. And there's no holds barred. We have probably too much fun.
Yeah, no, I'm like just getting into the age of weddings now. Like I have 3 coming up, the next month or so. And I'm starting to get into the swing of things, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's, it's something that you always have to look forward to every weekend. Granted, I'm sure you're kind of in the end of it, right? Like now all your friends are probably for the most part done getting married,
Yeah.
right? So
Colin was definitely the last one because look, we're 35, you know. I mean, sure, people could have second weddings.
of course,
You know,
yeah.
I do have one friend that's probably going to have a second wedding here in the next couple of years, which will be fine. That'll be fun. He said, I feel bad asking you guys to come to another wedding of mine. And
Yeah.
I was like, don't look at it that way. Look at it as a chance to just get everybody together.
Mhm. Yeah. And I
Let me
think
ask you a wedding.
yeah,
Let me ask you a wedding hockey question.
hit me.
Okay. If you could pick one guy to be at a wedding that you don't know, hockey player that you could like
I've never met.
be in their aura. No, you could have met them. Like it could be
Okay.
your boy. It could be your boy. Who are you picking to see at that wedding? What player? What New York Ranger? Current player?
What do you mean? Like if my friend's getting married, like
Yeah,
what
like
player
who
would I
are you
want there?
hoping is at the wedding that you are just like dying to be friends with? Is it the obvious choice?
No.
It's not Loff.
Basically just like who's the cool guy I'd want to chill with in the NHL.
Like who do you want to be friends with that you're not friends with?
Oh man, that's a tough question to ask. That's a really good question, actually, though. Do you have an answer? Well, I think.
Well, I would have thought it would have been Lafreniere for you.
No, you just build that up because like you are you. I don't really have that like affinity to be friends with him. You know,
Okay.
I'm trying to think who the coolest guy would be. What's your answer?
I mean, I don't really have that. You know.
Yeah.
I don't. It's probably slightly different for me. I guess. I mean.
I don't know if I'd pick a younger guy. Like I think I'd pick someone a little bit older.
All right.
Like, you know what? Like Brady Tkachuk, honestly. Brady Tkachuk would be my pick. He seems like the coolest guy. I've met him once. I did one of those skating interviews with him, and he was so cool, so nice. I feel like he'd be a really fun guy to party with.
All right.
I'd pick him.
I figured you would have picked a New York Ranger. I'm kind of
I'm around them. I see them. You know, I think I don't know if partying with them would be like, I don't know. I feel like they wouldn't want to party with me.
Yeah. Well, they'd probably be worried you're recording them and God knows what else. So
that's more.
Anyways, look, a lot of weddings in the summer for hockey players. There's a short period of time where you can get it. Oh, there we go, Vic. Vic's got the picture there.
Mm-hmm.
You can see some of the boys' outfits. James Van Riemsdyk front and center with that jacket. I'm kind of in the middle there with the orange stripe. That's my wife next to me. And then Kevin Shattenkirk over her shoulder, his wife, a guy by the name of Joe Lavin. He was a captain at Notre Dame. I think second or third round pick by the Blackhawks, played in the American League. And, you know, he was our teammate at the national development team. So everybody showed up with their outfits. There was a lot of really cool, creative outfits at this thing. It was pretty cool. So,
well, speaking of outfits, I guess that's kind of a good segue into, you know, what is somewhat popular news today. Steven Stamkos in his new Nashville threads. And before we talk about Steven Stamkos, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Out West. Summertime just got a little sweeter thanks to the guys over at Out West Golf. That's right, everyone, as we mentioned earlier this year, Out West has released a brand new collection featuring 2 new hoodies and 6 stylish polos. But here's the catch. Some styles are flying off the shelves faster than expected. So head over to www.outwestgolf.com and use code Cuppa, CUPPA, for 15% off of your first order before they're gone. Out West products are the perfect blend of comfort and functionality. Swing, hit, run, and move in the best up-and-coming activewear line in the game. This year, experience our products for yourself. Get out and get active this summer with Out West. You'll be glad you did. And I saw that picture of Steven Stamkos in Nashville, honestly, and it wasn't that weird to me, Colby. I don't know if you feel weird about it. Like usually we see guys like Mike Modano in Detroit or Jerome McGinley in Boston, like all these legends who played in one spot their entire career. And it looks weird seeing them in other uniforms, but seeing Steven Stamkos in a Nashville jersey, it didn't bother me.
Yeah. So I would say the Stamkos thing is really weird to me.
It is.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason I feel so weird about the Stamkos one is because Nashville, it's a newer team. Right. I don't feel as thrown off by the picture of Mike Modano in a Red Wings jersey because honestly, it's a Red Wings jersey. It's an original 6. It's an iconic looking jersey. I feel like anybody can look good in a Red Wings jersey. I feel like Patrick Kane looks as good in a Red Wings
He
jersey
did.
as a
Rangers
Blackhawks
too.
jersey,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
yeah.
And same thing,
Yeah.
right? There's something about those original 6 uniforms that I think are really, really special. Even Jerome McGinley, like for whatever reason, it just didn't strike me as weird. And I was in the organization when the Jerome McGinley stuff was happening and going down. I remember when Jágr came to the Bruins. I don't know. Like maybe that's unfair of me, but I just think some of those original 6 uniforms, when you put an old legend at the end of their career in them, I don't know. I think it's kind of awesome. So the Stamkos one, if he goes to Detroit, I probably am like, geez, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And nothing against the Nashville uniforms. I mean, I don't love Nashville's uniforms. I love the team. I love the city. I'm super impressed with what they do. I love being there for games. So I'm not dogging Nashville, but I've never thought the Preds uniforms were like, oh, those are really cool.
They're
like,
sick. Yeah.
they're just fine. Like they're fine. They're not terrible. But they never jumped off the page to me, Jonny, as like really, really awesome looking uniforms. So, you know, I don't know. I'm just not as I'm not as fazed by it as what I would say.
But maybe it's because like Tampa Bay's uniforms aren't like the same as Nashville's, right? Like I would categorize those to be somewhat similar. Like the Bolts jersey isn't a classic jersey.
I know it's not a classic logo, but I do think the Lightning have cool warm-ups or cool
Are you good?
Get up. I think they have that bolt on the side of their pant, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, I love their all black uniforms. I think they look great. You know, I think again, I think I would put the Lightning jerseys ahead of the Nashville jerseys, but I agree, not that they're not iconic emblems and iconic marks that you and I have been looking at since we started watching hockey at 2 years old, probably is when my dad had me in front of a TV watching hockey.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know this conversation has come up a bit with Sidney Crosby looking to extend in Pittsburgh. Who would be the weirdest player currently to see in a different jersey? Like, would it be Sid?
Yeah.
Like, you think it'd be him?
Mm-hmm.
Not Ovi. I'm trying to like who else is even like Stammer was probably one of the most tenured players with one team in the NHL.
Probably he was. Here's what I would say. Look, I think the Stamkos thing, the way it was botched, handled, everything really, really poorly done. But I think Crosby's at another level. I don't know if that's necessarily a fair thing because when you look at how many cups they've won and what they've done, like it's fairly similar. I know Sid has had more points than Stamkos, and I think Sid is a better player. I'm not saying it's apples to apples, but I think the difference here is that Stamkos came in and sort of inherited the team from LeCavalier, St. Louis.
He played with St. Louis for quite a bit,
right? Hobby Bulin. Well, I think he played with LeCavalier as well. I mean, that was a team that was really coming into their own. If you think about Sid, this is a team that was basically bankrupt. Nobody was coming to the games. They hadn't had a marquee player since, Jágr and Lemieux, and they had marquee players, but not like that, right? Not a Mount Rushmore player. Yeah. New ownership. Lemieux gets back involved as an owner of the team. All the stars line up. They get Fleury one year, Letang, they get Malkin, and then they get Sid, right? Like these guys hit the jackpot 4 years in a row with their drafting. And so, I think for me, it would be really hard. Like for whatever reason, even Kane, it didn't strike me as crazy weird. It doesn't feel weird. But even with the fact that the Pittsburgh Penguins are brutal and they're going to be bad, it would still feel like Crosby would be that guy. If you're asking me the one guy, I think Sidney Crosby alone would stand at the top of that chart. What about you?
I don't know if he stands alone. Like I still.
So
think
who do you put with him?
Like Ovechkin. Like I think it'd be weird seeing Ovi in a different jersey. I do.
Right. Well, but okay, but I thought we were talking about guys that were like
one team their whole career.
Well, currently. Okay, but I thought we were looking more at like the contractual side of it.
I just think Crosby's extension has been a conversation, and I was just curious, like if he will be in another jersey, because I think, and Vic and I were actually talking about it before you hopped on for like production meeting, and I think it's worse for the NHL if Crosby stays in Pittsburgh than it is better for him to stay with one team. And I don't know if that's like really a conversation right now. I think.
No, listen, let me tell you something. It would be great for the NHL to have Crosby go somewhere else. It would be great.
Vic thinks otherwise. Vic thinks it's better if he stays.
I think it would be great for the NHL. You'd sell 1 million new jerseys. You'd have this iconic player to talk about. I mean, look, one thing the NBA does get right, and I don't think they do much right, and I'm just not a fan of just about anything that they do, is that they trade superstar players like they're Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
And I just think that fans get way more into the offseason. There's way more to talk about every morning on television, on shows like this, because the superstars are always moving and joining up and teaming up and this and that. So, I think if Sidney Crosby was traded to either, like, imagine Crosby going to play for Montreal or Toronto. He's from Nova Scotia. I know there's no team in Nova Scotia, but I mean, could you imagine Sidney Crosby as a Toronto Maple Leaf to end his career? Maybe he helps bring a cup to Toronto like Ray Bourque did in Colorado. Can you imagine, John Tavares handing Sidney Crosby the Stanley Cup? Like, let's play this out. Let's say he went to Toronto and they won a Stanley Cup. Does Tavares even get the cup first, or does he let Crosby?
Crosby would be the captain in a heartbeat.
Well, I don't think if
aren't they already trying to strip the C off Tavares anyway?
I mean, listen, I don't know how true that is, or if that's just the rumors flowing around.
How could you have Sidney Crosby on your team and not have him be the captain?
Well, look, I think if he were to come in on a 1-year deal, what if he comes in at the trade deadline, whatever the case may be? Like, I just don't think it's as simple as stripping a C off of another player. I don't think Sid, jersey, but he's I don't think Sid would want that, to be honest. He would want that. And I'm actually falling into one of your stupid little hypothetical games, and now I'm hearing myself do it, and I want to throw up. But I don't think it would be bad for the NHL if Sidney Crosby were to move teams and go chase a cup the last couple of years, because he's not getting another cup in Pittsburgh.
No, I think it'd be better if he left, and I will stand by that. Vic just said, I don't want him to be a journeyman at the end of his career like we saw with, Iginla and Yager and some of those legends that we've seen. I mean, I still think Crosby's obviously ahead of those guys in his legacy and whatnot, but I get what Vic is saying. There is something special about a player spending his whole career for one team. I do agree with that, but for my own entertainment value, I'd much rather see Crosby play somewhere else. I think you have a better chance.
And that's what we care about, the entertainment value.
That's all there is. As far as like other news that goes, I mean, Quinton Byfield just signed an extension, 5 years, $6.25 million with the Kings. We bashed LA a couple weeks ago and bashed Rob Blake, just like most people did with the LA Kings in the offseason they've had and the trades they've made and what they've done. But this seems like a pretty good deal for both sides. Byfield had a great breakout season for the Kings, very similar to Lafreniere in New York. Those are two guys that went 1 and 2 in their draft year in 2020. It's great to see Byfield finally come in.
Was he second overall? I thought he was
third.
Was
2. He was 2. Yeah, he was
positive.
2. Positive.
Okay.
Yep. And Vic can double check if you want, but
if you're positive, then we
fairly positive he was 2.
Yeah, I thought he was 3 for some reason, but that sounds right.
Yeah, but last year, 80 games played, 20 goals, 35 assists, 55 points, plus 19. Tim Stützle was 3rd overall in that draft. But yeah, what do you think about that deal? I think it's a pretty good deal for both sides. Like, it's honestly, that's the deal I would hope that Lafreniere could get, next year.
I mean, look, I think it's a good deal, but I don't think it's as big of a home run deal as when you guys were texting about it with me. And the only reason I would say that is look, he's another guy that had a slow start in his NHL career, struggled out of the gate. 2020, 2021, 6 games and a point. You don't really count that year. Second year, only 40 games played, 10 points. Third year, 53 games played, 22 points. Okay, so that's a pretty nice progression, but only 3 goals, right? So he's only scored 28 goals in his career, all right? And look, I think they're still giving him that deal thinking this guy's going to get a lot better and he's going to progress, and it's going to become a very team-friendly deal. But as far as his production right now, for one season, I think it's a fair deal for both sides. I don't think that this is some team-friendly slam dunk. Like, I think in year one, this is actually more of a friendly deal. Like, it's a more favorable deal to Byfield.
I'm more so thinking like 3 years from now, that could look like a steal of a contract.
Or the 1 year could be an anomaly. Now, I actually believe in the player. I think he's going to be good. And clearly that's what they're banking on. But look, he gets 5 years. How old is he?
He's 21. 21.
So he
was an RFA.
He gets to 5 years. So he walks himself.
Or he's going to be an RFA next year. Or was.
I almost wonder if he, to get 5 years, maybe he took a little less money, because I think they probably would have liked to have got him on an 8-year deal. And by the first basically 3 years of him being a UFA, this walks him into his 7th season in the NHL. And that's when you become a UFA, 26 or 7 years of service. So, that's very favorable to the player. That $6 million deal. Like, if he progresses and the cap continues to go up, you're looking at a guy who, probably he may get to 12 million in his next contract, right? I mean, he might, just based on where the salary cap's going and the fact that he will be 26 years old. That is a prime age to get your big time deal. So, this deal's worth how much? About $32 million guaranteed. And you look at that and you're like, wow, this kid's going to have a chance to make like $125 million in his career. So, because his next deal could be a 7 or 8 year deal, or an 8-year deal with LA for $10-12 million. So you're talking 80 million plus 30 million. Now all of a sudden you're at $110 million. I mean, did we think Byfield would be $100 million plus a year player? I mean, this contract certainly sets him up for that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if you had guessed before his career started that he could get there, obviously with the slow start that you had just mentioned, I think that would be a bit of a setback to what people would have thought for him. But again, like, this is still a young kid, like, I think by the time
21 years old.
Yeah. By the time he's 24, 25, like, he could easily be a point a game player, right? Like, I think that's the potential, and that's not his ceiling, but I think that's the potential, or that's the hope for him. But also Vic just said, as we're talking right now, Colby, it is, again, it's 4:40 on Tuesday. These episodes in the summer, we don't do them live on Wednesday morning, but they air at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. We record them on Tuesdays. But Frank Saravalli, our friend of the show, our insider, just dropped news that the St. Louis Blues have announced defenseman Torey Krug has been diagnosed with pre-arthritic issues in his ankle. He's hoping for non-surgical intervention, but currently out indefinitely. And if surgery is required, he will miss the entire season.
Right. So that would mean $6.5 million would go to LTIR. Currently, they have too many players, but I do believe it's because, I use Cap Wages now, which is just like Cap Friendly. Shout out to Cap Wages. We love you guys, because I know everybody was like Puckpedia, but I got to tell you, Cap Wages, you wouldn't even know you're not looking at Cap Friendly. So that gives the St. Louis Blues like $12.5 million in cap space. Falk, Colt Parayko, Leddy, Perunovich, Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Those are 5.
They also just signed Ryan Suter too.
Ryan Suter makes 6. And then they have Tyler Tucker and Corey Schooneman, guys who would be probably trying to make the team. They're not really like regulars in the NHL at this point. So who knows what that means? I mean, they've got 14 forwards, it looks like, under contract. Only one of those guys is on an entry level, Jake Neighbors, but you're not sending Jake Neighbors to the minors. I mean, he's an NHLer. You've got Kyrou at $8 million, Thomas at $8 million, Shen at $6.5 million. And then Buchnevich just got that big extension. He makes 5.8 this year and then moves to $8 million next year on his extension. But I don't know, $12.5 million. Like, you got to wonder, are they going to use that money? Are they going to sit on that money? But that will certainly, change maybe the summer outlook for the St. Louis Blues. You got to wonder if maybe, I guess I need to, of course, I just went off their cap wages, but I almost
weren't they
wonder
trying to trade Torey Krug last summer though too?
They tried to trade him to the Flyers, and he flexed his no trade. He had he had either a no trade or a modified no trade, and the Flyers were one of them. Falk can play the power play. Parayko can play the power play. Leddy, Perunovic. So they have power play guys. So I don't think just because Krug is down, that means they have to go out and find a power play guy. Although, when I look at that defensive group, Krug is probably the most natural power play quarterback that they have. I mean, Falk is great on the power play. He's a shooter. Parayko has a bomb. He's a shooter. Leddy, I don't think he's a huge power play guy anymore. Maybe a second power play goal. And Perunovic is a little bit, unproven, I guess, as a top. So maybe they're now in the market for a guy to run their top power play. So who knows? Maybe it's Kevin Shattenkirk they're reaching out to. Maybe it's Tyson Barrie they're reaching out to. I don't think things. I don't think there's bad blood with St. Louis and Shatty, but he did leave there, and it was traded from there years ago because they couldn't come to a contract agreement on an extension. So you never know how Doug Armstrong's going to feel about that. I know with Alex Steen taking over, him and Shattenkirk are very close. So maybe that's something he speaks up and says we could use this guy to fill in for Torey. Torey's a left shot, Shatty's a right shot. You never know, right? I mean, he had a lot of good years there in St. Louis, so who knows, right? Who knows?
And I still St. Louis has to do something because if you ask me, I still don't see them as a big threat for the playoffs right now.
They seem like they remind me of the Islanders. It's like they don't really want to burn it down.
They got their cup. They got a cup in 2019, like they did.
Well, and they do have some players that are productive and that make some money. So, but they don't have the right mix, and they haven't had the right mix for the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's almost like, we could stay right in the theme of these sort of middling teams, right? Like the teams that are kind of chugging along and middling. How about the Columbus Blue Jackets? We're sitting here and it's July 16th. Why doesn't the Columbus Blue Jackets have a coach? I mean, it sounded like McClellan was the guy, but then apparently they couldn't agree on a contract. And when you're still under contract, having been fired from one team, there has to be agreements from all sides because, if Columbus were to offer him $1 million a year and LA is paying him $6 million, LA has to pay the difference. So LA can say, no, we're not agreeing to this because you're not paying him enough. You're not taking enough money off our books to let him work for you.
Yeah. Right? I've never understood how coaches' contracts actually work.
They're guaranteed contracts. It's
no matter
a guaranteed contract. You get fired, you get paid. Now, if you get another job, they owe you the difference. So if you get a lower paying job, let's say you go from head coach to assistant coach and you go from making $2.5 million to $750,000, they got to pay you the difference, right? The 1.75 or 1.85. So, the team that you have been fired by still actually has a little bit of say in the matter.
Well, okay, so I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but I'm pretty sure Lindy Ruff was extended last year and got fired by the Devils this year and now is hired by the Sabres. So who's paying him? How does that work?
Depends on how much he was extended for.
Okay.
And depends on how much he signed for. He could be getting paid.
Curious. Yeah, I don't understand.
He could be getting paid by both teams. That's how players, when they get bought out of contracts, it goes. You're getting paid by multiple teams. So that's how coaches' contracts are. So if Lindy Ruff was making 3.5 with the Devils and he's making 2.5 with the Sabres, well, then the Sabres owe him $1 million, the Devils owe him $1 million a year.
So Vic is also just saying that the Leafs got out of Keefe because Jersey paid him more than Toronto. So then that would make sense to what you were saying, that the Leafs don't have to pay him because he got more money for New Jersey.
Right. And they get off the hook for like $5 million a year. Who isn't going to say yes to that? That's a huge win for any organization. But what is Columbus doing? Get off your wallet. If McClellan was the guy you wanted, give him what he wants. But I also heard one of the issues there was that I think McClellan said this is going to take X amount of years and probably wanted like a 5-year deal because you're still in a little bit of this kind of rebuild denial for Todd McClellan or for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I have a feeling term was also an issue with the McClellan Columbus thing, but where do they turn? I mean, I guess the rumor now is Dean Evison and Jay Woodcroft.
Yeah. I was talking to a Columbus Blue Jackets scout today, actually at the UMass camp, and he said that Dean Evison seems to be the lead candidate right now. Again, though, he didn't have like a ton of information on it and who they're actually searching for. But Dean Evison was the name that he told me that stands out the most right now in their coaching search. But again, there's still names out there like, I don't think Gerard Gallant will be the guy for them. Gallant obviously didn't coach last year after being fired by the Rangers 2 years ago. But, I think there are a lot of good guys like Jeff Blashill you can go to. And Jay Leach, what's ever happened with him? Because last summer
Jay Leach took a job as the assistant coach in Boston. He left Seattle and went back to Boston. He's on his second stint as an assistant coach.
He was an assistant last year with Boston
Bruins. No, he was in Seattle the last number of years. And when they skipped him over to become the head coach, he was probably like, forget this shit. I'm going back to Boston. He's a New England guy. He lived in Charlestown for a long time. And I think he felt like the Bruins were just a better place for him. So he's still running a defensive group, but he'll be doing it for the Boston Bruins.
He was the name that was talked about last summer when people were searching for head coaches.
Yeah. He's been named a number of summers in a row.
Who would you pick right now to be the next head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets for you to put one name?
Look, I thought, I always thought, from what I heard, Dean Evison was a good coach. I think that would be a good fit. I think it's a guy who probably knows how to deal with veterans. The question I would have is, does he know how to deal with development and young players? Because there's no shortage of that in Columbus. The one question I would have is, how well does he work with an American League staff? Because, right now your jewels, if you're Columbus, are in your young players, right? No one has more stacked level of prospects than Columbus, or at least they're up there with everybody. So I think Dean Everson would be a good pick. Mike
Russo had a great piece in The Athletic after Everson was fired by Minnesota with him. I think they sat down for like 2 hours and had a great conversation, and Russo turned it into a really good piece for anyone that's interested in just, reading about Dean Everson. Sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to get that out there while it was fresh in my mind.
You don't have to apologize when you cut me off.
But I'm respectful.
I don't apologize.
You like cutting me off, and I don't like cutting you off. I like to hear you speak and let you finish.
So anyway,
by the way, Mario still hasn't answered me, so this might be a lost cause for today's guest. And that's
okay. Well, that's all right. We'll keep powering through, and
that's a dagger on me there.
That's a big dagger for you. That's a -1. So I will say this. I believe, though, that they need to get someone hired quick here. I mean, it's mid-July. We're going to wake up and it's going to be August. You want to get a coach an opportunity to get in, start going to see some of the veterans. A lot of these new coaches will jump on a plane and go visit with this player and go visit with Johnny Gaudreau and go visit with Werenski and go visit them at their summer residences just to go to dinner, maybe whatever, coffee, whatever it may be. So I think they really need to get that done. I think that's something that's really important. I'm really shocked it's taking this long. I really am. I guess Don Waddell feels like it's not like he's competing with
there's no rush.
He's not competing with other teams, but you want to get a guy in and you want to give them an opportunity to get situated, right? These guys are very prepared individuals, and having them rush is not the way. I mean, Vincent was set up for disaster with the whole Mike Babcock situation last year and the way that all went down. So the question that I do have about this whole situation, because Joel Quenneville is now available and is the best hockey coach not coaching in the universe. Is he not going to even get a consideration in Columbus because of the PR nightmare and because of the fact that the whole Mike Babcock thing was such a disaster that they just can't really afford another hire that brings negative press?
I actually think it might be more on Quenneville not wanting to coach Columbus. Like, if he's going to make a return, why would he want to go to a shit show like Columbus has been? I think that might be more of the story with this one.
Well, the only reason I would say that I don't know if people look at that way is because you've got
which way? Just to clarify,
as Columbus not being a marquee spot for a guy like Joel Quenneville.
Well, I think Columbus is a good opportunity for someone who's not established yet.
I understand that, but let me make an argument against that. Okay, you've got really good ownership that don't meddle. Okay, they leave people to do their jobs. All right, their fans are great; they show up. Okay, they treat their owner treats their players really well. It's a good place to live. Right. There's a lot of bonuses there. They've got a loaded prospect system, and they're probably a couple years out from having a chance to be pretty good when you look at all their good young pieces, right? And if you can move on from a couple of bigger contracts, that probably provides you with a little bit of flexibility to bring in some better younger pieces, and then marry that to like all these young guys that they've drafted in the last couple of years. So I actually think of all of the quote unquote like rebuild-ish situations, I always thought Columbus would be really the most attractive.
Yeah, but I just don't think a coach like Quenneville, who's
don't you think he would just be happy to be back in the league?
See, I don't. I mean, I think he would be happy to be in the league, but I don't think he's just like desperate to get any job in the league. Again, I don't know him personally, but I don't think he's a guy that to me would take a job just to have a job. Like, I think he's a guy who would want, like, he'd want to come back to the NHL and coach a team that he wants to coach. You know, I really do think that. And I think he even alluded to it in his interview on the Cam and Straight podcast, which was the only interview he's really done where he talked about everything. You know, again, I think he wants it to be the right situation. And, you know, if he goes to a team like Columbus and it doesn't work out, guess what? He might not get that chance again. Like, he might look at this as a, hey, like, this is the one opportunity I will get again to have a second chance. And I have to make sure it's right, or else that's it. Like, again, these are just things that I'm assuming. I don't know, but that would be what I think he's thinking, if that makes sense. I thought Toronto would have been the perfect gig for him.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. But the timing of that didn't really work out, you know?
Yeah.
The timing of that just was off and wasn't right. So, we'll see what happens. I got to think they're naming a coach here in the next couple of days. Like, by Friday, you'd have to think a coach would be named, you know, the next coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
By Friday?
Yeah, by the end of this week, I would think. I mean, what are they waiting for? So we mentioned the name Pascal Vincent, you know, the guy who just got fired by Columbus. He just got hired to be the Laval Rocket head coach in the American Hockey League, Montreal's American Hockey League team. So he landed on his feet. He'll get an opportunity kind of to restart himself. You know, things did not shed a very positive light on him, the job that he did in Columbus. I know we want to talk and give a little farewell to Joe Pavelski.
Yeah.
I know I want to talk a little bit about Tony Voce. Let's clean up a couple of other items. Artur Shielov signs a 2-year deal in Vancouver, $850. I think Casey DeSmith ended up signing for more than that, you know, and so they save themselves a couple $100,000. They get a younger player, team control, a guy they probably want to see more of, just to see, you know, is he the heir to the throne one day from Thatcher Demko? Who knows? Or is he a sort of a career backup? It's a very, very reasonable deal. That's all I would have given him. It would have been crazy if I saw him get like $2 or $3 million after his playoff run. We saw the kid Schmid from the Devils have a great playoffs 2 years ago and then ends up back in the AHL this year. So kind of a smart move out in Vancouver to not, you know, overpay a backup goalie who had a really, really brief run of excitement. What'd you make of the Braden Schneider deal? 2 years, $2.2 million a year by the New York Rangers. What was the reaction amongst Rangers faithful on that one?
I mean, I think everyone was pretty happy. It's a bridge deal. It's a guy who's 22 years old. He's proven himself a little bit. You know, he's not a top pair defenseman. I think he's a second pair defenseman. And, you know, right now with everything going on with Jacob Trouba, I think, you know, he's the guy who should be playing that top 4, you know, minutes. But again, Schneider has only played like 2 full NHL seasons. Like, it feels like he's been a Ranger for 4 or 5 years already. And, you know, he came in, I think, in February of the 21-22 season, you know, so for him to be making 2.2, I think it's perfect for right now and where this team is.
Like, how many How many
What?
right shot second pair defensemen in the NHL are you getting?
Not getting
for
many.
$2.2 million?
Yeah.
Like those guys make $4 and $5 million. So you're right. To get him for 2 more years at a 2.2 cap hit, I mean, I think that's a really good
no-brainer.
contract by Chris Drury. And if that kid really can solidify that second pair right side for the New York Rangers and really be sort of this hybrid, mean, defensive puck mover, because he's a good puck mover. He's not, I wouldn't call him a defensive defenseman. He's kind of this prototypical, just two-way guy, better defensively than offensively. I'm not saying he's gifted offensively, but he's not a
shot. He's got a hard shot from the point.
He's not a guy who's going glassing out, Jonny. Like he makes a good first pass. He can make a seam play in the neutral zone. He gets north quickly. He's not scared to follow the play up. Like I think he's a very, very well-rounded sort of two-way first pass, physical, plays with a little bit of
drop
jam.
him too.
Yeah. So I actually think his ceiling is really high. And I think 2.2 million for 2 years I think that's nice work by Chris Drury.
I couldn't agree more. And I think Rangers fans actually love him. So they're happy to have him back. And I think this is just it's a good deal for both sides, right? Like he still has a lot to prove because he is young. Again, he's proven enough for the 2 million, So I'm happy about it. It's nice that he's going to be here for, not, I don't want to say like the end of the window, because let's face it, 2 years from now, this team could look very different. I think the window is somewhat closed.
It will
depending on what happens with Shesterkin too. I know we talked about that last week. There's a lot of question marks that the Rangers are going to have 2 years from now. So I think to have him in this cup window, which is right now, is still a very strong asset and a very strong piece to have. But there are some other things we want to talk about. I think, do you want to go into Joe Pavelski next, or where do you want to take this?
What do you make of the Evgeny Kuznetsov rumors that he's leaving the NHL and having his contract terminated to go to the KHL? I think a 4-year deal is what the rumor is.
Yeah, I actually thought he did really well in Carolina. Like he was good in that series against the Rangers.
I wouldn't say
he was.
He did really well. I don't know.
He was playing like fourth line minutes. He wasn't.
Well, that's what I mean, though. They didn't trust
for
him
the role he was in. I thought he played well.
Yeah. See, I didn't think it worked all that well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's concerned about what it's going to look like next year. Now, the Washington Capitals ate half of his deal. He's got 1 or 2 more years left at $3.9 million. I forget exactly. He's got 1 more. So is this year his last year, Vic? This would be his last year, correct? Not 1 more after this year. Yes. He's got 1 more year.
Yeah, this year.
3.9 against Carolina, and I guess another 3.9 against the Washington Capitals. Now, if he terminates, he loses that, almost, $7+ million, right? Just under $8 million in cash to go play in the KHL. I would, I guess they would be paying him more than that. And maybe he's a guy that's decided he wants to go home and finish his career. We've seen Russian players do that time and time again. You know what? It's probably the right move.
Yeah.
Because he's certainly never getting that type of money in the NHL again. So if they're willing to give him a 4-year deal for $6-7 million a year in Russia, he'll never get that again here. And so if he feels like that's the way to extend his career and he wants to go home, the guy's been a fun player to watch. He's been super entertaining. His shootout move is definitely unique. I think guys try to copy him. He's had times where he's been an all-star player. He's had times where he leaves you wanting a little bit more, and he's faced a lot of criticism. We know about his off-the-ice shenanigans. So, certainly interesting rumors. Nothing has been confirmed yet. There's been some pushback on the rumors. So we'll kind of see. I feel like with the Russian players, the rumors usually start, and then it dies down a little bit, and then it ends up happening.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if we get to that point with him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not one to always believe in the rumors, but this one I would lean toward believing in it. Kuznetsov's last 2-3 years in the NHL has not been very pretty
because of the situation. You believe it. It makes sense because of the situation.
Yeah. Plus, like you said, there's more money to be made back home for him. He'd be a guy who'd be a rock star there in the KHL. So I think, while it is a not a huge loss for Carolina, but dude, again, like Carolina has had a rough summer. I feel like, they haven't really done much to make their team better, right? Like, what are the Carolina Hurricanes looking like next year?
Yeah, they took a step back this summer.
Like their roster. I'm gonna pull up their lines right now on dailyfaceoff.com. Like going into next season, while it looks somewhat similar, like Kuznetsov was slotted in here on Daily Faceoff as their second line center. And now their centers are Aho, Stahl, and Jack Drury. They have Martinook signed again. They got William Carrier for their fourth line.
Nason left, and he was a good solid player.
They signed Roslovic, who will be in their top six probably from what it looks like on Daily Faceoff.
We know that movie. Brady left. Yeah. So they lost Tony. Tony DeAngelo remains not a part of their group anymore either. So yeah, I think Carolina took a nice little step back this summer. That is absolutely my opinion. So we'll see what happens. We'll hopefully by next week's episode, we'll have a little bit of an update on that and hopefully more news to really dive into and chomp our teeth. I think the last thing we want to do today is we got to pay our respects to Joe Pavelski. He officially announced his retirement. This is something that, we've speculated since things ended for him. Came up short yet again of the Stanley Cup. A guy who played 1,300 plus NHL games, had 1,068 points, 476 of those were goals, 592 assists. So this was a guy who scored and set other people up. But the question would become, Jonny, is this a Hall of Fame player? Is this a guy who did enough? Did he have enough points? Yeah, he had 1,000 points, but he played 1,300 games. He never won a Stanley Cup. He never won an Olympic gold. He never won a Hart Trophy. He never won a Rocket Richard. So while a phenomenal player, I don't know. We just had a Hall of Famer on the other day. Are we talking about the same quality and caliber of player? I don't think we are.
I mean, as much as I want to say that Joe Pavelski should be in the Hall of Fame, just because I'm a Joe Pavelski fan, I'm an American-born kid. He's an American-born. I would say that he is going to be one of the legends of the game, right? Because he always performed in the playoffs. He's probably one of the best net front guys that we've seen
ever
in NHL history, right? I think the argument in today's NHL was Pavelski and Chris Kreider. Those are the two guys that, are the best at deflecting pucks right at the net mouth. But again, because there aren't really any accolades to his name, I think it's hard to say he's an automatic Hall of Famer. I said no, I think when we originally talked about it, when Dallas lost in the conference final, because I think that was the conversation, right? It was is Pavelski going to retire? If he retires, is he in the Hall of Fame? And I said no then, and I think I'm still saying no now, just because there are so many other guys that you think of that also had 1,000 points that even may have won a Stanley Cup that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And to put Pavelski in there, I think it's a lot of just recency bias that we would say yes. Yeah. I mean, I've never met him, but everything I've heard about him and obviously the story you see.
What about Shea Weber? I wouldn't say Shea Weber was.
He's won a Norris. No, hasn't Shea Weber won a Norris?
He probably did win a Norris.
I'm pretty sure he won a Norris. Joe Pavelski hasn't won anything.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Vic, can you double check that? I'm pretty sure Shea Weber won a Norris, but I'd like to know for sure. But again, because there's no.
But here's the question: PK Subban won a Norris Trophy.
Yeah, but PK doesn't have a Hall of Fame. It doesn't automatically make you a Hall of Famer if you win an individual award.
Well, I'd be interested to look at PK's numbers versus Shea Weber's numbers.
The longevity of his career too.
Sure. Looks like no. Shea Weber didn't win a Norris Trophy. He won a Mark Messier, which is a leadership trophy. Jacob Trouba also won a leadership.
Yeah, he did.
So
Mark Messier.
So that would be my thing. Is if we're putting Shea Weber in the Hall of Fame, I think that actually makes Joe Pavelski a Hall of Famer. Because
Shea Weber has Olympic gold though.
What?
Shea Weber has Olympic gold.
He does. That's fine. But
probably World Junior gold too.
Yeah, probably a World Junior gold, but I don't think World Junior gets, factored into your Hockey Hall of Fame career and your bid. Here's what I would say. Do I think he should be a Hall of Famer? No. Do I think he will get into the Hall of Fame? Yes.
I'm the opposite. I think he should be, and I think he won't get in.
Name, recency bias, I think those kinds of things are going to help him get in. Like I think they helped Shea Weber get in. So all regardless, good for him. A hell of a career. It's too bad he didn't get a cup. I think everybody was hoping he would, but unfortunately wasn't able to get that cup and seal the deal.
Yeah. Great career though. And I'm sure he'll still be involved in the game somehow, right? Like he's a pretty good speaker. I can see him, doing some media stuff and whatnot, but, yeah, sucks to see Joe Pavelski retire. Like you said, Colby, we were hoping we'd see him lift the cup one day, but, I know you wanted to talk about your friend as well, right?
Yeah, I want to finish the show today just talking a little bit about Tony Voce. I think by this point, everybody in the hockey world is aware. We lost one of our own, 43 years old, way too young. Played for the Phantoms in the American Hockey League, is in the Boston College Hockey Hall of Fame. He's a local Philly guy. He's a guy I've known for a really long time. We actually work with the Flyers Warriors together. I was with him 3-4 days before he had a heart attack and he passed away. I know we're filming this episode on a Tuesday. Tomorrow being Wednesday when this will be released, I'm actually going to go to his funeral tomorrow to pay my respects. But gone way too soon. Check out Nasty Knuckles podcast. They've done a massive tribute episode of guys telling funny stories. And the one thing I'll say about Tony was that you always had fun when you were with Tony. Like he was one of those guys that always was fun at the rink, was always funny to be around, was always down to go drink a couple of beers and shoot the shit. A great guy that was through a lot in pro hockey and the business world and then got back into hockey. Look, there's a GoFundMe for Tony. It's easy to find online. If you have it and you want to help, do it. It's a great cause. He's one of our own. I'm sure the wake, the viewing tonight and the funeral tomorrow will be really crowded. You'll see just how many hockey people, from all over will be going. I've talked to a number of people flying in for it. That'll be really sad and he will definitely be missed. He had 3 young daughters and family. And so, you just wish them all the best. Anytime we lose one of our own, it sort of hits you hard and makes you realize just how, precious things are and not to take things for granted. So I just wanted to mention him at the end of the show. I know that's all the time we have for today. Too bad Mario Ferraro did not show up for us. It's
on the shit list for now.
1 hour and 15 minutes since we were supposed to record with him. So you're right. He goes on the morning Cuppa Hockey no fly list, as we like to call it. We're not going to share with you who else is on that list. It's mostly just people that I absolutely fucking hate. Some of you who listen to our show probably know who some of those people are. So no Mario Ferraro today. We're sorry about that. We were excited to talk to him. We had a laundry list of questions to get into with him. We did our best to fill the time otherwise going around the league. Vic, good to see you. Good to catch up with you. Jonny, get home safe from UMass. I know you've been doing the hockey camp all week up there at UMass. Me, I've got the USA Hockey development team program going on this week that I've been, on the ice and in the classroom and helping out and talking to some of these young up and comers in our areas from USA Hockey. So we will definitely reconnect for another episode dropping next Wednesday at 9 a.m. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully you can survive the heat.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.